So if we look at page 4, we'll do refuge in bodhicitta on the top of page 4 of Orange Manjushri. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. We'll start with Q&A, and then we'll do the practice. And then if there's time, I'll explain a few more bits and pieces. So before we get into the practice, did you guys have any questions, either on Zoom or in the room? Anything about the 7 wisdoms, about self-grasping or self-cherishing or Tantra in general? Any of these issues now that they've been brewing? Is there anything in the chat? I see the little red chat thing. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So specifically for meditation and improving our concentration, would you go to Manjushri for that, or is there more specific?
Yeah, for concentration. Manjushri is excellent. Manjushri is really good at helping with memory. Yeah, really good with memory, really good with clarifying details, stuff like that. All of them are kind of much of a muchness in terms of a really good method to develop focus. And all Kriya Tantra, all lower Tantra practices help you develop calm abiding, special insight focused on emptiness, or at least just calm abiding and special insight. Yeah, so Manjushri specifically, though, I think that there's a lot to be said for kind of choosing that as your go-to one if you're wanting all the things of that category to strengthen, for sure. And the question is, do you want to just kind of dive right into Manjushri, or do you want to do some single-pointed meditation first before you launch into the sadhana? Because you don't have to do a whole big long breathing meditation before you do the sadhana. It helps to do like 1 minute or 2 minutes to let surface distractions settle. Or it could be that you launch right into it, and then when you get to the mantra, that's when you give more single pointedness. So it could be that like when you first sit down, you're like, actually saying the prayers and going through these processes helps me settle. And actually, I'm not even ready for single pointed concentration until like we're halfway done. So it's really kind of knowing yourself when you want to really particularly emphasize concentration. Yeah. And if you want to strengthen analysis, choosing refuge in bodhicitta and or the 4 immeasurable thoughts is a good point to reinforce your lamrim, your stages of the path meditation. The visualization part is much more about overcoming ordinary appearance and grasping. So that give as much time and space as you feel inspired to do, but don't worry about it hugely until you have the empowerment. Yeah, go ahead.
So you don't feel like we need to follow the sadhanas perfectly according to Hoyle, right? I mean, we can tweak them a little bit.
Well, I mean, I hesitate to say that because it's obvious that I'm making adjustments, but it's based on what I know has to be there.
Okay.
Right. So in terms of adjustment,
not like an adjustment based on a dream that I have.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So it is, I think I've made this example before, but it is like when you're learning to cook or bake something, you need to follow the recipe until you understand everything about the recipe, then you can go off book. Right? Then you can go off book, then you can play with it, then you can make it your own. But until you actually understand the whys, you might be like, oh, I'm taking out baking soda. I don't like the taste of baking soda. And then you wonder why nothing rises. Right? So you cannot do without refuge in bodhicitta.
Yeah.
You cannot do without remembering emptiness. You cannot do without the mantra portion. It's very important to have some sort of offering section or praise section. You cannot do without dedication.
Could you do with like the introduction of, let's say, like Shakyamuni Buddha makes an appearance?
At the beginning as its own thing, right? Like if you want to do a Shakyamuni Buddha practice and then do a Manjushri practice, excellent. But don't fuse things together.
No.
Yeah, don't mix things together without knowing why or how or what the result will be.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they're going to have a conflict, right? They're all in cahoots, right? But it's about kind of knowing like, what is the intention of this practice? What's the result of this practice? And you kind of don't want to muddy the waters. Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit like if you're focusing on compassion, it's not like it's wrong to think about loving kindness, but it's going to water down the momentum of you diving deeply into compassion specifically. Yeah. And then, another time you do loving kindness, compassion is not the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in the reflective stage, it's different, right? When you're not meditating. When you're not meditating, sit and have a think about how all of these things fit together and interweave and collaborate, and how all the different tantric deities might kind of be involved in your practice and how to pace it and which to give more time to. In the reflection stage, there's a lot more flexibility. Yeah, because you really want to make it your own in that stage and understand kind of what is the essence of wisdom, or what is the essence of ethics, or what is the essence of compassion and these forms, and explore all that kind of archetypal stuff. Then you're really free to play with it. But I would suggest not playing with the sadhana itself until you really, really understand the mechanisms and the behind the scenes scaffolding of what the different things are trying to do. So what we've been doing is just adjusting it for front generation or skipping the extra prayers. But they're very obviously extra, and right in the sadhana, it will say, you can add praise to the Supreme Compassionate One, or you can add 7 wisdoms, but it's not built right into the text, which obviously shows it's okay to skip it if you don't want to do it right then. Does that make sense, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question, though. It is a good question.
Is it good to think about it? I mean, the way I think about it that helps me is these are written, there's a certain vibration, right? Mm-hmm. That goes into each one. There's a certain energy and vibration. I mean, our mind is all vibration, our whole body is a vibration, right? So is that a good reason to think you shouldn't be changing it because it's like you're saying, a certain vibration, a certain way of doing it for a certain result? If you start,
I mean,
it's not an intellectual thing, but it's a processing with the mind, how the consciousness kind of goes through this.
Yeah, I mean,
or does that seem too out there?
No, I mean, I think I know what you mean. And there is truth to what you're saying for sure. The sadhanas themselves were composed by people who have realizations. So why reinvent the wheel? Right? Like the Manjushri practice is mainly from the 5th Dalai Lama. Like, seems like he would know more than me. So I'm going to just do what it says. Right. And then there's been slight adjustments or different ways to approach it so that it's suitable for a general audience. But, it's one of these things where the mantra is definitely related to vibration, energy, that coming from the enlightened mind. You don't want to touch the mantra, except that I'm not saying it right. That you're not saying it right. That none of us really know how it's supposed to sound, because who speaks Sanskrit? Some people do speak Sanskrit, but it's a learned process. It takes a lot of training. Lauren could probably explain it to us very well. She studies Sanskrit, but actually we're not 100% sure. So what we do is mimic the teacher who taught it to us. And it's an unbroken oral tradition from the time of the Buddha. So even if it's had some distortion over time in terms of the sounds, connecting to the unbroken oral tradition kind of trumps all of that. So there's all sorts of famous stories about how a different practitioner asked for a mantra and they misunderstood, but they had great faith and they said it wrong, but with a pure heart, and it worked anyway. But the thing is we don't want to change it to suit us. We want to do our best to say it the way we've learned it, that dance. The story I always love is the monk, I think it's even in the book, about the student who went and said, you know, what's my mantra? And the teacher was grumpy and he said, your nose looks like this like old lumpy seed, whatever it's called, a rakshasa. Your nose looks like a rakshasa, because he was annoyed about being interrupted. And the monk was like, got it. My nose looks like a rakshasa. My nose looks like a rakshasa. My nose looks right. And he developed all sorts of realizations because of his pure heart and faith, right? So it's this thing where for us, we want to think that we know better than everything else, but we also kind of want to be told what to do. And neither of those approaches is what's being asked of us. Yeah. Like there's one part of us that says, life's really hard. Just tell me what to do. Yeah. You wise, enlightened beings, just tell me what to do. Life's too hard. And then there's the other part of us that says, you're not the boss of me. Don't tell me what to do. I'll do what I like. Yeah. And I'll make it up from scratch. Like we're a complete contradiction. Yeah. And we take turns which side it is. Don't tell me what to do. Please tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to do. Please tell me what to do. And it's neither of those. It's the center. Yeah. It's really, they're offering something. We can choose to take it up or not. Yeah. And if we choose to take it up, it becomes our own, but we haven't made it. We've engaged with it and it became our own. Do you feel the difference? Right. Yeah. Gently, gently. Yeah, other practice questions. These are really good questions. Online? Yeah, Eleanor, is that you? I see you. Oh, I think the computer itself is muted. One moment, please. Okay. Please start again. I can hear you.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. The question when doing when doing the practices, is it acceptable to do Tonglen through all of them if you practice each one
of the 7 wisdoms?
Yeah, or even Chenrezig, you know, to do Tonglen during the process.
No, what you want to do is keep Tonglen associated with the 4 measurable thoughts.
Right. Okay.
So do 4 measurable thoughts, add Tonglen, or do Tonglen with the measurable thoughts.
Yeah.
And don't mix things, because again, it's not like it's wrong or contradictory. It's that it'll water down the intention of that section.
So it's okay to do it during those deity practices at that time. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
But the 4 measurable, right? Thank you. Thank you.
So pull it through. Don't mantra. Don't pull it into other sections.
No. No. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
The other question was, if you have received the empowerment once before and you receive it again, the requirement or the mandalas that are given to you, do you do the first one and the second one together, or do you just keep the first commitment?
All commitments you've been given, keep.
So if you do it twice or 3 times, you do it the 3 times. You take the 3 commitments.
I'm feeling a little hazy about what you're talking about specifically, but if the Lama said 21 mantras a day, and then you take it again and the Lama says do 108 mantras a day, do 108. Yeah. If they say do 21 just like the last time, just keep it at 21. You don't have to like double it.
Oh, sorry, I'm a bit hazy too. That was the question I was asking. If you've received it once and the commitment was, say, 21, and you do it again and then another commitment is 21, do you add on to that, or you just do the first 21? That's what my question was.
Yeah. So if the Lama adds to what you've been doing, you need to keep increasing. But if it's the same commitment as last time, you don't have to double your commitment. No, not at all.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a good question. And when you take an empowerment more than once, it's good to take the same empowerment again and again, because each time you get used to the process. You're like, oh, that thing that's coming around, actually during that point, I should meditate on this. And then there's that thing that comes around and that represents that. the first time you take an empowerment, you're kind of like, what on earth is happening? And a lot of it's in Tibetan, and then you're repeating things in Tibetan, and you might have been prepped beforehand. You might have had an orientation beforehand. You might not, so it's good to take it more than once because it goes deeper and deeper each time. And you purify your bodhisattva vows every time. Yeah. And restore
Thank
them.
you. Thank you.
Tantric empowerment before the bodhisattva vows, or does it automatically grant you the bodhisattva vows, or?
That second one. Yeah, during an empowerment, you will take the bodhisattva vows. So in the steps of an empowerment, the first thing is refuge. Everyone probably has refuge already. The second is bodhisattva vows. Everyone might have bodhisattva vows already or not, but those two are revived and reinforced in the practice itself, or given freshly the very first time. So it might be that you consider yourself a Buddhist, you love Buddhism, you have refuge in your heart, but you've never actually done the refuge ceremony. Your first empowerment is kind of your first official linkage to the unbroken oral tradition of refuge, and then also bodhisattva vows, and then also whatever deity it is. So all tantric vows will have bodhisattva vows with them. No escape. Yeah.
That's a lot of vows, right?
Sure is. Well, bodhisattva vows are just the 18 root vows and the 46 secondary offenses. Just. Right. So Kriya Tantra only has bodhisattva vows. The performance tantra also just has bodhisattva vows. But yoga tantra and highest yoga tantra also have tantric vows, of which there are 14. So bodhisattva vows you can totally study before you get them. Just Google bodhisattva vows, right? If you want a nice booklet, Google bodhisattva vows FPMT. A nice PDF will appear magically. You can read them, you can study them, you can look at commentaries before you ever take them. That is not true of the tantric vows. The tantric vows should not be read before you take them. And if you were to read them, they would not make a lot of sense. Or they might kind of freak you out or weird you out, or they just probably won't make sense. And if you're to look for commentaries on the tantric vows, they're not going to be complete because a lot of it is oral, even now. Even now, some of the tantric vows have a few paragraphs here and there you can read about them. But for the most part, tantric vow commentaries are still oral. So, it's not going to be anything like weird, right? You're not going to be asked to suddenly do animal sacrifice. You're not going to be asked to go dancing naked in the moonlight or anything. Like, it's not going to be weird. It's all variations on a theme, but it's specific to tantric practice. So it's still going to be bodhisattva related. It's also going to be altruistically related, but a lot more specific to tantric practice. And also things like, if you haven't already taken the vow not to have intoxicants, you'll take it when you take tantric vows. That's the one you should know going in, right? Because sometimes people are like, okay, I've got tantric vows. Oh crap, I can't have a beer. Right, better they know going in, right? Depends on your teacher, though. Sometimes your teachers will say you can have a drink, just don't drink till intoxication. So there's also some Lama discretion with at least refuge version of the intoxicant vow because it's a branch. Anyway, random aside. Yeah.
Are you qualified to give any empowerments?
Technically, yes, but I shan't.
What if we ask you?
No. No, I mean, the raw technical thing to be able to give a tantric empowerment is if you've done the full approach retreat of that deity and you have, pure vows, and you can purify your vows quite easily. So I'm qualified to do that, but it's much better if the person has realizations. I have no realizations. Yeah. So how can you know? They're giving in tantric empowerment. If they say so, though, if they say they have realizations, run away. Right. But really, your best bet is if it's someone who is associated with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, like the one that was most recently in California, Jada Rinpoche, for example. Who knows if he's realized or not, but he was giving empowerments and has been very much uplifted by His Holiness, which kind of gives us he's worth checking out. Still don't just trust people just because they're under the banner of an organization or they're under the banner of Buddhism or they're wearing robes. Don't just trust people, still check. Yeah, but when it's someone like Jada Rinpoche, that's a good kind of like worth checking though. Worth checking. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a good way of checking on your vows?
If a good way of checking on your own vows that you already have,
Yeah.
you can just go through the list and be like, doing good, uh-oh, doing good. Just really just read them and just check on your life. It's good to read your vows quite regularly, even if you just have the refuge lay vows, like not to kill, not to steal, even 2 of them, not even all 5, to like keep them awake in your mind. It really makes them have more power and depth. So honestly, just read them a lot. Yeah. Zoomer.
Yes, thank you. My question is about when you don't have to attach or cling to worldly. I don't know. My question is when I love like Tara sadhana. When I do it, I feel good, and like for example, Manjushri, I don't know. I'm a little bit like nervous about it, and somehow they become like my friend, and I'm attached to it. Where can I don't know if I can be confident about my feelings when the attachment began, and when it's like we have to know that this is the like all Buddhas compassion, all Buddhas with wisdom, but somehow I take one of them and it becomes my friend. Everywhere I go, I see like the picture in my
Hold on, you're making it too hard. Just do Tara then. Don't worry about it. Right?
Thank you.
Start standing off on the side feeling offended and hurt that you're not paying attention to them. Don't make it ordinary. Right? Attachment is exaggerating. Yeah, attachment is seeing the good in something and then exaggerating its importance, or thinking the good comes from its own side, divorced from context, or sees the good divorced from the whole picture where there's also bad, difficult, neutral, whatever, right? When we say attachment, we're talking about an exaggeration. Can you exaggerate the qualities of Tara? No, you can't, because you can't even comprehend how many there are. Right? You can't be attached to Tara because you can't exaggerate her qualities. The thing that you could exaggerate is that just by sort of saying the words or saying the mantra magically without any participation from your side other than just lip service, you could magically get enlightened. But that's attachment to yourself, not her, right? Yeah. So really it's in terms of karmic affinity. So the fact that you feel at home with Tara is not bad news, it's good news. A lot of people are trying to find which deity they have the strong affinity for. If you've already found it, don't force anything else. It's just that if you learn the other practices, it might be that you don't do them very often, but you know how when you need to, right? Like, there's times when, you're going to have a very important conversation with someone, and you want to be clear, and you want to be wise, and you want to be grounded. Tara, of course, can help you with that, but it could be that Manjushri might help kind of cut through some of the fog and the cobwebs in your mind about how to speak or how to kind of really convey the deepest wisdom. So before a big, scary conversation, you do Manjushri practice and then do your best with the conversation. So it's like a tool in your tool belt, but you might not even use it that often. And most Tara, for example. So these are kind of like training retreats. Giving you the different ways to approach these practices. The depth will probably come when you're all by yourself and you've kind of picked one to keep coming back to. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
So enjoy Tara, don't worry about it. If you're not loving Manjushri, no worries. Give it a bit more air. But he won't be offended if you leave him alone, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Doug, go ahead.
Oh, no.
No.
I was probably scratching this.
All right, any other questions, you guys, or any parts that you're not sure if there's a question yet, but you'd like more elaboration? Sections of the text? Yeah.
Why is Manjushri orange?
He is orange because Tibetans are funny about color, and really he's yellowish. Yellowish is related to Ratnasambhava, and Ratnasambhava is related to the wisdom of equality and overcoming pride. And what is one of our biggest obstacles when we're developing wisdom is pride. Yeah, because pride is like, I already know that. So how can you learn anything or develop wisdom if your pride is saying, I already know it, right? So even though he belongs to the Akshobhya Buddha family, which is related to transforming the energy that accompanies anger into mirror-like wisdom related to intelligence, there's also a relationship with Ratnasambhava. Yeah, just like white Manjushri is related to like long life and pacification and some Varachana things and, you know, et cetera. So all of the colors are related to Buddha family conversations, but the head of their Buddha family is what's depicted on the crown of their head by this little nub. Yeah, this crown ornament, the Ushnisha. And sometimes the artists are clever enough to draw a very teeny tiny Buddha in the top knot, and you can tell which Buddha family they belong to by the color of the Buddha in their top knot. But usually the artists can't quite get their pen in there that tiny. Oh, and the five Buddha families, it's kind of its own conversation, but just roughly, they're related to the five wisdoms. And the five wisdoms are the result of having purified and then transformed the energy that accompanies the five delusions. So they're also related to the five elements and times of day and directions and all the things. But you basically read Amitabha, Lotus family, purifies attachment, helps you develop discriminating awareness, discriminating wisdom. And then you have Varachana, white. And that's related to purifying ignorance and transforming the energy that accompanies ignorance into all-encompassing wisdom. Yeah, spacious, not spacey, right? And then Akshobhya is related to Manjushri, right? As we were saying, Akshobhya is the Vajra family and blue, and the Vajra family blue Akshobhya, that is all about looking at mirror-like wisdom that reflects clearly and so is related to water. And then Amoghasiddhi, green, purifies jealousy and helps transform the energy that accompanies jealousy into swift wisdom, like Tara. And who am I missing? Yellow, Ratnasambhava. Yeah, jewel family. And that's related to purifying pride, which can help you develop the wisdom of equality related to the earth element. So
the elements too, right? The red is fire.
Yep.
Green is water.
Wind.
Wind.
Yep. Blue is
Yellow
water.
is earth.
Yep.
And blue is
Water. Water, and white is space.
White is.
Yep, like that. More on that also, but good book for five Buddha families. I think there is even one in the shop by Rob Priest, and it's got a mandala on the cover, and it's, if you remember off the top of your head, it's newish. Anyway, there's a good one. It's got a chapter on the five Buddha families. There's a good Chogyam Trungpa book called Journey Without Goal, which is a good chapter on the five Buddha families. So not often is it kind of its own text, but often you'll get a good chapter on it in any number of tantric texts. So anyway, like that. So when you're looking at these things, sometimes a Thangka painter will give you a lot of good information. Sometimes you can just read about it in the long sadhanas once you have the empowerment. So the longer versions of these practices will sometimes say Akshobhya at his crown. It'll actually say it explicitly. And these shorter ones, you can't really find which Buddha family they belong to just by looking at the sadhana. But the longer versions you can. Yeah, other questions? And at the end of the day, all of them have all 5 wisdoms, all of them purify all 5 delusions. It's just the emphasis. Yeah, it's just the emphasis. So remember when we did our Chenrezig practice and there was the 5-colored nectar light descending from Chenrezig's heart to our crown? That's really planting the seeds for the 5 wisdoms, even though Chenrezig belongs to the Amitabha Buddha family, and so is emphasizing purifying attachment and is emphasizing developing discriminating wisdom. All 5 are being planted on our continuum when we do that visualization. Yeah, and all of them are like that. So it's they're all equal, but they emphasize different things for our sake. So we'll do refuge in the 4 immeasurable thoughts. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from desire for friends and hatred for enemies. Sawa Shuddha Sawa Dhamma Sawa Shuddho. Sitting with your awareness of emptiness. You can give yourself a few sentences of conception about your intellectual understanding of emptiness, trying to elicit some sort of connection that then you can rest in. And from emptiness in the space in front arises the shape of an egg with its point upwards, made of light, sitting on a flat moon disk. Inside of which is an orange letter D. From the letter D, infinite amounts of light emit. It fills the whole of my body, purifying all my negativities and removing all my obscurations, accumulated since beginningless time. We become so filled with light that light rays leave through our pores, becoming offerings to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, thereby delighting them. And this causes the blessings of the body, speech, and mind of these holy beings to dissolve into light that destroys the darkness of ignorance of all sentient beings, thus placing them, all of us, in wisdom's illumination. Everywhere is light. The rays of light then recollect into the syllable D. It transforms into light. Our ordinary perceptions and clingings vanish. And in the space in front arises Venerable Manjushri, facing us, orange in color, with one face and two arms. His right hand brandishes a sword of wisdom in the space above him. At his heart, between the thumb and ring finger of the left hand, holds the stem of an Upala lotus. Upon its petals in full bloom, by the left ear, rests a volume of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. He sits in the full lotus posture and is adorned with precious ornaments for head, ears, throat, and shoulders, as well as bracelets and anklets. Draped in a flowing mantle and skirt of exquisite silks, his hair is tied up in 5 knots and coils counterclockwise. Bearing an entrancing and serene smile, he sits amidst a mast of light radiating from his body. The letter Om marks the crown of his head. Ah marks his throat. Hum marks the heart. Hum emits rays of light that invite the wisdom beings from the inconceivable mansion of their own pure lands. They all resemble Manjushri and are surrounded by hosts of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So imagine all holy beings take the aspect of Manjushri, gather and absorb into the Manjushri in front. Zai Hum Bam Hum. And so just stabilize Manjushri in the space in front. Scanning up and down, sharpening any details without letting the mind getting tight. Most important, holding the awareness of the wisdom mind being here. And we make offerings to Manjushri. Om Arya Vagishara Sapari Variagyam Pratisam Soha. Om Arya Vagishara Sapari Variagyam Pratisam Soha. Om Arya Vagishara Sapari Variagyam Pratisam Soha. Om Hare Vagishara Sapari Varadupe Pratisam Soha. Om Hare Vagishara Sapari Varaloke Pratisam Soha. Om Harya Vagishara Saparivar Gande Prati Sahum Soha. Om Harya Vagishara Saparivar Yuade Prati Sahum Soha. Om Harya Vagishara Saparivar Shabda Prati Sahum Soha. Praise. I make obeisance to your youthful form, O Manjushri, like that of a dynamic and graceful 16-year-old. You repose upon the full moon as your cushion, at the center of an expansive milk-white lotus. I make obeisance to your speech, O mighty fulfiller of wishes, so mellifluent to the minds of countless sentient beings, a lucent ephony to accord with each listener's capacity, its multiplicity embellishing the hearing of all unfortunate ones. O Manjushri, I make obeisance to your mind, wherein is illuminated the entire tapestry of the myriad objects of knowledge. It is a tranquil ocean of unfathomable profundity, of immeasurable breadth, boundless like space itself. And at the heart of Manjushri is a moon disk, an orange syllable D. Encircling it at the disk's periphery stand the rosary-like mantra, Om Arapatsana, with D in the center. All the syllables radiate light. The light gathers both the wisdoms of exposition, dialectics, and composition, and the wisdoms of hearing, contemplation, and meditation, which are possessed by the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Shravakas, and Pratyeka Buddhas, and the wise and learned masters of all the Buddhist and non-Buddhist traditions. And turn to page 9. And the first request. Please grant me blessings to achieve great understanding, which is able to understand and explain the meanings of the extensive scriptures without resistance. And so think that great understanding, in the form of orange-colored nectar beams, clarified as pure Manjushri, are emitted from Manjushri, absorbs into me and fills my whole body. Then atoms of nectars, which are clarified as pure Lord Manjushri, radiate out from the Manjushri in front to the victorious ones and their sons. Thus, the great understanding of the victorious ones and their sons, in the forms of the deity's holy bodies, absorbs into me and fills my whole body. And so just stabilize. From Manjushri in front, waves of orange light, which carry with it countless tiny figures of Manjushri, planting the seeds and ripening the seeds of great understanding within you. And with that idea, add the mantra. Om Marapatsanadi. Om Marapatsanadi. Om Marapatsanadi. Om Marapatsanadi. Om Marapatsanadi. Just continuing the mantra silently under your breath. Waves of great understanding flowing into you. Om Marapasanadi. The second request. Please grant me blessings to achieve clear wisdom, which can understand and clarify the details of very subtle and extremely subtle difficult points without resistance. And clear wisdom in the form of orange-colored nectar beams, clarified as the syllables of the mantra, Om Marapasanadi, is emitted from Manjushri, absorbing into me, filling my whole body. Then atoms of nectars, clarified as Om Marapasanadi, radiate out to the victorious ones and their sons, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Thus, the clear wisdom of the victorious ones and their sons, in the form of Om Marapasanadi, absorbs into me and fills my whole body. Stabilizing orange nectar light coming from Manjushri, carrying countless garlands of the mantra, planting the seeds and ripening the seeds for clear wisdom. Om Marapasanadi, 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 Om. Continuing the mantra together with the visualization for clear wisdom. Om Marapasanadi. The third request. Please grant me blessings to achieve quick wisdom, which quickly cuts the non-understanding and wrong understanding and doubts without resistance. And quick wisdom in the form of orange-colored nectar beams, clarified as the syllable D, are emitted from Manjushri, absorbing into me and filling my whole body. And atoms of nectars, clarified as the syllable D, radiate out to the victorious ones and their sons. Thus, the quick wisdom of the victorious ones and their sons, in the form of the syllable D, absorbs into me and fills my whole body. Stabilizing that orange nectar light with countless Ds made of light coming to you, planting the seeds of quick wisdom, ripening the seeds of quick wisdom. Om Marapasanadi, 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 Om Marapasanadi. sanity, with wisdom. Sanati. The fourth request. Please grant me blessings to achieve profound wisdom, which can understand and explain the meaning of the scripture of depth and without resistance. Profound wisdom in the form of orange-colored nectar beams, clarified as the implements, text and sword, are emitted from Manjushri, absorbing into me and filling my whole body. Thin atoms of nectars, clarified as the implements, radiate out to the victorious ones and their sons, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Thus, the profound wisdom of the victorious ones and their sons, in the form of the implements, absorbs into me and fills my whole body. Countless texts and swords, all in the nature of nectar light, flowing into you. Profound wisdom. Om Marapatsanadi, 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 profound wisdom. Om Marapatsanadi. Request for the fifth wisdom. Please grant me blessings to achieve the wisdom to explain the Dharma, which gives definite, supreme understanding of all the meanings of all the words of the scriptures without resistance. Wisdom to explain the Dharma in the form of orange-colored nectar beams, clarified as texts, are emitted from Manjushri, absorbing into me, filling my whole body. Then atoms of nectars, clarified as texts, radiate out to the victorious ones and their sons. Thus the wisdom to explain the Dharma of the victorious ones and their sons in the form of texts absorbs into me, fills my whole body. Countless texts in the form of light. Wisdom to explain the Dharma. Om Marapasanadi, 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 Om Marapasanadi. Wisdom to explain. The sixth. Please grant me blessings to achieve debating wisdom, which enables one to achieve bravery over evil debate without resistance. And debating wisdom in the form of orange-colored nectar beams, clarified as wheels of swords, are emitted from Manjushri, absorbing into me and filling my whole body. Then atoms of nectar, as clarified as wheels of swords, radiate out to the victorious ones and their sons. Thus the debating wisdom of the victorious ones and their sons, in the form of wheels of swords, absorbs into me, fills my whole body. Debating wisdom. Om Marapatsanadi, 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 Om Marapatsanadi. Debating wisdom. Om Marapatsanadi. And the seventh. Please grant me blessings to achieve writing wisdom, which makes meaning and sound perfect and gives clear understanding and happiness. writing wisdom in the form of orange-colored nectar beams, clarified as texts and wheels of swords, are emitted from Lama Tsongkhapa and his two sons, who are one in nature with Manjushri, absorbing into me and filling my whole body. Then atoms of nectars, clarified as texts and wheels of swords, radiate out to the victorious ones and their sons. Thus the writing wisdom of the victorious ones and their sons, in the form of texts and wheels of swords, absorbs into me and fills my whole body. Writing wisdom. Om Marapatsanadi, 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 Om Marapatsanadi. Texts and wheels of swords, writing wisdom, making meaning and sound perfect. Om Marapatsanadi. Turning back to page 7. And continue the visualization of orange nectar light coming from Manjushri. Just simple, straightforward orange light. All of the wisdom of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, solitary realizers, hearers, all the wise and learned masters, Buddhist, non-Buddhist, secular, scientific, all forms of wisdom flooding to you. Continue the mantra and the visualization of light. Om Marapatsanadi. And then think that Manjushri dissolves into light and absorbs into you. Blesses your body, speech, and mind. And then purifying any excesses, omissions, mistakes with the Vajrasattva mantra. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Deno Badishta Diro Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Sukokayo Me Bhava Anorato Me Bhava Sawasiri Me Payatsa Sawa Kama Sutam Siddham Shriyam Kuru Ha 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 Hu Bhagav Sawa Tata Gata Vajra Mame Mutsa Vajra Bhava Mahasamaya Sattva Am. And over the page, the dedication. By virtue of this practice, may I quickly accomplish the powerful attainments of Manjushri, and then may I lead all beings without exception to that supreme state, remembering the emptiness of ourselves, the practice, and the result. Empty because they depend upon causes and conditions, upon parts and context, upon the mind's imputation on a valid basis, therefore nothing existing from its own side while still having a positive result. Okay. So while it's fresh, is there anything you wanted to ask about? Yeah, just, flipping through the sadhana, were there bits that you wanted to clarify at all?
So what we're supposed to really visualize the wheel of the sword, and because when I asked about the nectar, you said just think of it as just light.
When we're doing the simple version, yeah.
But when we're doing this, so specifically think of these wheels of swords.
No, just do what it says, right? Don't overthink it, right? So each wisdom has its own visualization.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes it's swords. Sometimes it's Manjushris. Sometimes it's mantras, right? Like it says in each one.
Okay.
And if you're not doing the elaborate one, just simple orange nectar light.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. So, but it's also okay if you're like looking through these and you just want to emphasize one. It's not like you have to do all 7. If you're thinking, actually, I really need some debating wisdom. Okay, Wheels of Swords, then zero in, just go for it. Yeah, definitely okay to do that. Yeah. Other questions about the sadhana or the wisdoms or the visualizations? Yes. Yes.
I have a question. The long mantra, I'm having a hard time with the pronunciation, and I know you're going fairly slow. This will be recorded so I can slow the speed and try to say it over and over, because I know I'm pronouncing letters that are not pronounced. Is there another way to learn them?
The way that you're describing sounds perfectly fine.
Okay.
I'm sure there is. Also, just kind of, mouth it as best as you can on your own tone. Just kind of like go through. And, there's going to be slight variations in the pronunciation depending which teacher is leading you through it.
Right.
So you could do a YouTube search and get a Tibetan saying it if you prefer that.
No, I love the way you're saying it. I think I'll just thank goodness that this is recorded, because I'll be playing it many times.
That's
So
great. In the Dropbox, which I'll send you guys all the link to the Dropbox. Some of you are in class and you already have that link, but those of you that haven't been coming to class, I'll send you the link to the Dropbox, which has MP3, all of the mantras. So you can take just the mantra itself and practice any of the mantras that we've been doing in this course. Yeah.
So I guess I was wondering if there's a printed version that has phonetics, where it says silent or long E, short A sound, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think there is, or I'm sure there is. I've seen such a
I'll
thing.
Google it. I'll Google it, maybe?
Google
Okay.
it. But,
Thank-
you know, I'll make sure it's a reputable organization, not somebody's.
Right, like Latswana House, perhaps.
Yeah, Lotsawa House may or may not have phonetics. They probably have just the Tibetan script and the Sanskrit script, which is for cool, fancy people that can read different languages.
Oh, well, I'll stick to the recording then. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And look, it does take a while to get your mouth around it, and then it just rolls off. But I mean, you know, things that seem easy are not easy because anybody is special. They're easy because of practice and familiarity.
Repetition.
Yeah, exactly. So never feel like, oh gosh, I'm stupid, I can't do this. No, it's just repetition, you know, like, you know.
Yeah. Thank you.
20 years, so it's just mother's milk at this point. Right. Yeah.
So I'm having trouble visualizing like all enlightened beings, and is there like some cool trick you know about that?
Of all enlightened beings.
Or like to multiply, visualize one and multiply them all, or is it?
It's yeah, it's like for Samattabhadra offerings, maybe some of you know about Samattabhadra offerings. It's like you take something that you can hold in your mind, like say you're like, okay, here is a Manjushri. I could close my eyes and imagine it made of light and real, just one. And you're like, I don't have to think of more. I just think of that same one, now two. And now two, now four, now eight. And you do a multiplying like that. And you just kind of see how far you can stretch your visualization. And whatever the outer limits of your stretch is, the rest can just be light. The rest can just be light. But it's an interesting experiment to see like how vast can you make your mind? Because it actually can really open up a lot of cool stuff for the rest of your practice. And you wind up doing this like expanding, multiplying visualization in a lot of different contexts in mantra. Like in the offering practice, even just in the sutra practice of offering, there's making clouds of Samattabhadra offerings. So you'd be like, oh yes, I'm offering these beautiful flowers. And now multiply them and multiply them and multiply them. And now the whole room is filled with this vase of flowers. And now several rooms and now all of space. And as far as I can conceptualize. So sometimes we get trapped by our conception of how far we could visually see. Sometimes that's the outer limit of our imagination. Yeah, do you sometimes get stuck there? Like as far as I could see with my actual eyes, that's as many offerings as I can picture. But see if you can like kind of bust it open a bit. Yeah, because even just that practice itself creates that really excellent mental flexibility. Yeah, but if you're having a slow day, right? Like they'll have a slow day, or it's like just after lunch, light. Yeah. Yeah.
So actually, that's a good question, because what I've been doing is like what we have with the 1,000 arm chin raising. You have to all those hands or arms on the side are just kind of little blips, right? So in my thing, all I'm seeing is the tip of their crowns. And that way I can see a whole lot more, because it's just it's like a valley of.
I think it's better to
Like
see the whole
exact-
body. It's better to see the whole body.
It's better to
Yeah.
just do life and not
Yeah.
do like that.
Yeah.
right?
Not like you're looking over a crowd and you only see their little nubs.
Yeah.
No,
Yes,
not like that.
that's what I.
But good try. Good try. Yeah, no, try and see their whole body. No. Because also that puts you in the above position, and that's kind of an odd psychological view, right?
Right. it does,
Um,
right.
Lets everybody be even. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So when you're doing the visualization of Manjushri and you're wanting to just do single pointed concentration, you're not doing any of the other song and dance. You're just stopping and pausing before you get to offerings and praise, right? And you visualize, you built it up, and now you're just stabilizing, and you want to give yourself a few minutes of shamatha. Try and see it about this size. This is a really good size for visualization when it's shamatha, when it's single pointed concentration. At other times, you might want to make it bigger, right? Life-sized or even bigger than life-sized. But when you're developing single pointed concentration, this is a really good size. It's not an accident that so many statues are this size. And you have it about an arm span in front, slightly here. You imagine it's right there. Close your eyes, bring it to your mind's eye. Yeah. So that's just for the shamatha, if you're developing shamatha on the basis of an image. And, you know, using the breath is fine, but it's actually, I think, sometimes easier to develop single pointed concentration on the basis of a mental image. Yeah. Because when you're doing it on the basis of the breath is moving, right? So you're trying to get a snapshot conceptualization of a generic image of breath, right? And that's kind of tricky to do. And so I use the breath mainly as a way of subduing surface distractions and getting kind of a general focus happening as a preliminary to the main practice. Yeah, that's usually what I use breath for. When I'm actually wanting to zero in on specifically that skill of single pointedness, I often use a mental image rather than the breath. Yeah, because the breath needs to become a mental image for it to go very, very deeply. And that's kind of hard because the breath moves. I say that, but this will move in your mind's eye too. Just keep putting it back. Yeah, go ahead.
I imagine it could be really sweet to go into this and do this part and work on that. Maybe like 5 minutes now and 5 minutes throughout the day.
Yeah.
And then like the next day work on the next part. Does it work like that? Or you just trying to get through a certain amount of it?
It's good to do the whole thing in one sit, but it's totally fine to give more emphasis to a certain section one day and a different emphasis another day. That's really excellent. That's really skillful, because then you kind of build like a friendship with the practice. Yeah, so it's not like do half the practice, put it aside, go off and buy groceries, come back, finish the practice, try and do it all in one sit. But it's completely fine to just kind of do quick enough, just walking through it and zeroing in, going deep, and walking through it, dedicate. That's totally fine. Yeah, and it's a good way of keeping it alive for you, because you're really giving a lot of intensity to one section, but you're not putting too much pressure on yourself that the whole thing has to have all of this depth when your mind isn't quite ready for that. Even when you're being led, right? At a certain point, I'm guessing you're like, I'm a little bit tired now. That's a lot of moving parts. That's a lot of things to hold. That's a lot of things to think about. And that's with someone walking you through it. So when you're walking yourself through it, sometimes it's easier, but sometimes it's even harder, right? So just refuge and bodhicitta, actually, that'll be my stopping place. Refuge and bodhicitta, deep dive. Yeah, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Then the rest of it, finish the rest of it in 5 minutes, you know. Then tomorrow, refuge and bodhicitta, normal speed, 4 immeasurables, deep dive, and so on and so forth, right? But yeah, always try and do the whole practice in one seat, but it's totally fine to emphasize different sections. Yeah, other thoughts? Questions? Good. Oh, yes, go ahead. Zoomer? Is it Eleanor? Is she muted?
Unmuted.
Oh, perfect.
Just thank you. Just when we repeat each time, you know, to the bodhisattvas and his sons, it's okay just to mentally add daughters.
That's a classic question, and I love you for it. We're talking about the lineage holder. Yeah, the lineage holder. So we're not talking about gender, even though we're using a gendered word. And that is totally aggravating. And I do not love gendered language, my own self, millennial that I am. But I think that it's important that we don't change words just for the sake of our resistance. We have to remember, why is it in the text to begin with? It's because sons in the traditional context were the lineage holders of the family name. So when we're saying victorious ones and their sons, we're saying Buddhas. And what comes from Buddhas is bodhisattvas training on the path, who are actually not related to them by blood in any way. They're not sons and they're not daughters. They're not related at all. The lineage holders of the Buddhas are the bodhisattvas. So if you don't like sons, don't change it to daughters, change it to bodhisattvas. How's that? Is that okay?
Okay, it's fine. Thank you.
Gendered language isn't, yep, especially damn the patriarchy, right?
Yeah.
but there's importance there, so we don't want to just flick it off just because it's aggravating. Yeah.
No.
Too many.
Thank you.
Yeah, other thoughts? Yeah, and victorious ones, this sounds very kind of warlike and sort of, again, like competition or something like that. We're saying victorious ones, victory over negative emotions, victory over suffering, not victory over anyone in particular, victory over your own mess. Yeah. And then their sons, that's the bodhisattvas. So if victorious ones and their sons is aggravating, you can say Buddhism bodhisattvas. That is okay. Yeah, other bits? Yeah.
With visualizing orange nectar, I go to sunsets and fire.
Mhm.
Is that a
Yeah, nice.
Okay.
Yeah. Sunsets or fire. As long as it's not feeling too roasty. Yeah, that's a nice color.
On
Yeah.
the topic of fire too, there's fire on Manjushri's sword. What does that represent?
Wisdom. The whole thing. Yeah. So it's a wisdom sword made of sky metal. I do not know what sky metal is. It is made of sky metal. This is what they tell me. Then there's little flames around the sword. And so the whole thing is representing different forms of wisdom that cut through different forms of ignorance. Yeah. Yeah. And so wisdom fire is something you sometimes see depicted, but fire doesn't always mean wisdom in Buddhism, Buddhist iconography. Like if you think of this picture here of the stages of meditation, which has the elephant and the monkey and the rabbit and the monk going up the path, for you guys that can't see it, there's fire there too, but that fire means effort. Right. So what it means in one context isn't necessarily what it's going to mean in another. But in this context, wisdom related.
What about the fire around some of the deities?
That can refer to wisdom fire, but also wrathful wisdom fire. But depending on which
Like
deity.
wisdom, sort of.
I mean, always generally, right?
Yeah.
Always generally,
about
but no,
wisdom.
don't oversimplify it. Yeah, because also with the tantric deities, sometimes the fire is tilting left, sometimes it's tilting right, sometimes it means many different things. So it's not just one answer. Yeah. Context. Context. But it's never going to mean hurting anyone. We know that. Okay. As long as we know that, that's the main thing. Yeah. Nor is it an invitation to become a pyro. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.